Live from the chicken wing capital of the world, Buffalo, New York. You're listening to the Childcare Bridge Podcast, your source for the best tips, tools, and tactics on how to market and grow your childcare center, ensuring total domination. Total domination. This is the Childcare Bridge, and this is your host, Michael Tasner.
Hey there, and welcome to episode 11 of the Childcare Bridge. Today's topic is this: saving you time. So I'm on phone calls all day, every day, with owners, with directors, with other members across childcare centers. And the thing that keeps coming up day after day after day, and it's not something new, and this isn't something that I haven't seen in my business and other industries, is, Michael, there's just not enough time in the day to get additional things done. So if I'll suggest, hey, we need to do X, Y, Z. We need to execute some of the things that I just talked about in the last 4 episodes of the podcast, which are going through the 4 M's and doing things to make sure that you start your year on fire. What are some things you can do to end the year strong? And they'll push back and say, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. So rather than me just saying, well, I'll just get it done, and it's much easier said than done, I wanted to give you a couple of strategies that I've deployed and that I've helped other center owners deploy to start to get back more of their time. The entire goal of this episode is for you to get back at least 5 hours every single week, 1 hour a day. Now, some of the strategies, if you take them and deploy them, could give you back 15, 20 plus hours every single week. And I'm going to start with the one that made the biggest impact on my life, and that's the one that has freed up a ton of my time. So I'm going to give you ones that are battle tested. They've been talked about, so I'm not inventing any of these, but rather giving you what's worked for me and what's worked for hundreds and hundreds of other center owners. So the biggest one for me is something called processing. And I learned about this from a earlier mentor of mine. His name is Dave Crenshaw, and he wrote a couple of books, one of which was called The Myth of Multitasking, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But the exercise that he took me through, and I did a 3-day kind of boot camp all day, every day with him. And the exercise was step 1. Michael, I need you to tell me all of the different places that you have stuff. Now, stuff could mean one of many things. Emails, voicemails, text messages, receipts, important papers, random papers, books. Like, where is everything? And in all these different places, there would be one point for every place that I had something. And he called them gathering places. Where are all the different places that I need to go to get data? Get stuff. And when I finished the exercise, I was completely taken back. I had 36 different places that on some days I would go to without really consciously realizing it every single day. Now, I didn't access all 30 plus of those every single day, but in a lot of days it was 15, 20 different places. For example, I had 6 different email addresses. And I would log into every single email because they all were going to their own separate place. I had a Google Voice phone number that I would receive stuff on. I had Slack messages that I was getting stuff on. Facebook Messenger that I was getting stuff on. I had some receipts that I kept in my car, some receipts I kept in the trunk, some receipts I had in a top drawer, another drawer. Some receipts were filed in my filing cabinets in my basement. Other stuff was at my office outside of the house. I had some receipts there. And all of these different places, and I never really thought about it. And what he very started to rapidly show me that my biggest time waster, among others, was having to spend time going to each of these and then trying to find it. Well, I'm looking for a receipt. I need this receipt. I've got to return something. All right, well, where is it? Well, it could be in the trunk. It could be in my car because maybe I left it in there thinking I might return it. Could be already filed away in the basement. Maybe I scanned it with my phone or the little scanner that I have that scans receipts. In that case, it's stored digitally, but it's not in Dropbox or Google Drive. It's stored on the desktop of my computer. So do I need to go there to find it? Did I leave it in my pants pocket? And you're having to do that stuff all day, every day. And not just for receipts, but having to constantly go and check. Do I have any new messages on these emails? On Slack, I was going to Skype, Facebook Messenger, and I realized that I was spending about 3.5 to 4 hours a day just going and checking all of these different places. So my suggestion for you today, and the action that I took, was to methodically reduce these down to under 10, and I believe, I think I'm down to 8. The simplest one that you can execute this afternoon is to have a big bin that goes wherever your main kind of gathering place of papers, receipts, bills, etc. So whether it's on your desk, on a dresser, bookshelf, wherever that main place is, needs to be big. Every single thing goes in that particular spot. And the key is that you do not touch it every day. You're going to execute something called processing, and you should put this on your calendar for about 90 minutes twice a week. During processing, this is when you're going to go through and you're going to empty that inbox, that physical box, down to 0. If they're calendar things, you're going to put them on your calendar. If they're bills that need to be paid immediately, you're going to pay them and then file them. If it's anything that takes less than 5 minutes, you're going to do that task live. Because what I realized I was doing was I was shifting a lot of things around. Well, I saw the receipt. I could do something with it in 2 minutes. But instead, I would just throw it over here. And then next week, I'd look at it, but I wouldn't do anything. And every single time you're touching that receipt, that voicemail, that message, that's just additional time that you're wasting that you could easily be getting back. So what I realized was after reducing my gathering places and then spending 90 minutes twice a week on processing, I would go through and I would aim to empty everything down to 0. And that's not just that physical box, but your emails, making sure that you're processing those. I'd be happy to do a whole nother episode on Inbox Zero. I would encourage you to learn about Inbox Zero. That has completely transformed the way that I do email. I used to have anywhere between 25,000 and 150,000 emails in different folders. I used to have 300 to 500 plus emails in my inbox every day. Typically 3 to 5 times a week, my inbox gets to 0 emails. Now, that doesn't mean that every single email is replied to, but there's a system then of how I'm replying, tasking things out, etc. It's called Inbox Zero. There's a whole lot of really cool things you can do from a productivity standpoint. But my biggest one for you today, and I've got a few others I'm going to share, is to look at all the places you're gathering data, gathering stuff, and see which ones you can start to eliminate and which ones you can start to combine. So email, if you're going to multiple inboxes, you can have all of your email go right to Outlook, for example. You can have all your email, even if you don't use Gmail for all of your other email, can all forward over to one Gmail inbox where you can then be replying to all of those right from there. If you got multiple phone numbers, voicemails, for example, my voicemails are instantly transcribed and then they're sent to me on Slack. So I've got it there. I don't have to then go. I don't have to listen to it. It's all then in Slack. So I've brought most of my stuff to Slack, and I use a fancy tool called Zapier. Zapier then allows me to pipe things into Slack. So every time I get a new Facebook message, I don't just have to sit there and wait for it on Facebook. It comes into Slack. So I'm able to look at Slack. I'm able to manage all of my different inboxes. My voicemails are all coming into Slack. So I'm not having to go to all these different places. All of my papers, when they're getting initially, before processing, they're getting put in that box, and I'm doing that twice a week. That one set of processes minimum has saved me 15, 20 hours a week. Like I literally used to spend 3+ hours a day wasting and just processing things at random, wanting to make sure I got all my emails responded to and things like that. And just, I spent a ton of time looking for everything. Where's this password? Where's that receipt? Where's that? Like just chasing stuff. So I highly encourage you to look at limiting your gathering places. And at the very, very least, have that physical inbox, that physical basket where everything goes into it. That's the first one. Second one is this concept of multitasking and quick questions. All day, every day, if you look at it, and if you were to do this for a day, do it for a week, write down all the times that somebody pops in, knocks on your door, got a quick question. And if you were in the middle of doing something, let's say you were doing some accounting, you were doing some marketing, you were writing your painted picture document for next year, you were rewriting your handbook, job ads, whatever that strategic thing that ideally you were working on, you've now paused that and you answer the quick question. The downside is that you now have to take roughly 15 minutes to get back in your head on what you were just doing. Every single one of those interruptions. But it's also every single time that you switch tasks. And this is the one that I still struggle with every day. So example, you're checking your email, you hear your phone ding, you switch over to your phone, you look at it, you respond, you go back to your email. On average, it's taking 15 minutes for you now to get back into that, whatever you were doing, that email that you were responding to, because now you're thinking about the text message, and that little 30-second distraction just wasted 15 minutes of your time. And when you start to add those up, I can promise you that there's probably 20 to 30 of these that are happening every single day, whether they're the quick questions, whether they are you switching tasks from this to this to this to this because you've got 50 browsers open. Now, you might be saying, well, Michael, that's just the nature of this business. I would argue that in some cases it is, but 90% of the time, the reason that you are having all those quick questions is that you don't have that fourth M shored up, and that is your methodologies, all of the systems and processes. You're not having regular structured meetings, and you're not getting and responding to an end-of-day report, which will be the final thing I'll talk about in just a second, an EOD report. What are the quick questions that you're actually getting? So what I want you to do for the next, let's call it 3 days, every time that someone comes into your office and has a quick question, I want you to write down the question, write down the time, write down the person. And you're free to answer those. But then after the 3 days, I want you to have an honest conversation with yourself to really see, well, were these things that I should have gotten interrupted for? Or are these questions that could have been answered by having regular one-on-one meetings with the director, having a weekly huddle with all the teachers, or a monthly town hall meeting? Are these things that you don't have a written process for, that if you were to have XYZ process written, that you could have handled? Are these things that if you were to have trained your director or someone else on your team, so maybe it's a parent that has a question, well, the director should really be answering those questions. But if they don't know the answer, then is that a training issue? Almost every single one of those quick questions, those interruptions that are costing you 1 to 2 hours a day, every single day, if not more of your time, most of those are going to be system issues, process issues, training issues, or can be solved by having regular meetings. So that's time waster number 2. Your switch tasking, all those quick questions, your task to move that one forward. Because I don't like talking in theory of saying, hey, you can do this and hopefully it works. Take 3 days, write down all those things that you are getting asked and interrupted with, and then start to check them off the list of which ones you can solve, and you'll start to see those quick questions start to disappear in your time to free up. The final one that I want you to execute this week, like right away, put this one into action, is having your key team members that are reporting into you, and then other team members that are reporting into other people at your center. I want them to send you an EOD report, end of day report. Any metrics that you want to see on a daily basis. What was the active count today? How many people were not here? How many staff did you have for the day? Did anyone call in sick? So all those key metrics you want to see. Do you want to see the lead volume every day? How many tours were done? Whatever those couple of quick hit metrics that are going to put your mind at ease, but also give you the ability to see a pulse on how things are going. The second piece of that is any issues that you need to be aware of. Hey, you got to be aware of this issue with little Johnny. I have tried to solve it, but I'm just making you aware. Any wins, any heads, so kind of employee headlines and headlines from any of the families or kids. And then finally at the bottom, any stucks. I am stuck on XYZ. I need your help. Every single day as you start to get these from your director, for example, and maybe the director is the only one that reports into you, then you're only seeing that report. But then all the other people should be then sending their reports to the directors. I'm stuck on this. I need this for my classroom. I have a question here. Here's a headline. Here's some good news. And all that boils up, and the director then can decide what they want to kind of disseminate to you based on what pulse you like to keep. But getting these end-of-day reports for me has freed me up probably 30 minutes or so a day. Because rather than me starting my day saying, what's the update here? What does our numbers look like here? I heard this person called in sick. Is that accurate? What's going on here? I'm getting these on the end of the day report. I can look at it. I've got a pulse. I can take specific action, and I can help eliminate stucks. So I just gave you 3 different sets of ways that you can start to free up your time to be able to really start working on the business, not in it. The first one we talked about was reducing your gathering places and really getting that number down, and then executing something called processings. You're going to do that twice a week. You get your inbox down to 0, your physical inbox, your email inboxes. You're rolling through all your voicemail. So you're methodically and strategically getting that done. The second thing we talked about was switch tasking and all those quick questions. Your action step is to write down for 3 days all those quick questions, those interruptions, and see which ones can be solved by way of better training, documentation, just more information, and see which of those you can quickly eliminate so that you can be in the zone, not having to switch task. Finally, we talked about getting your E of D, your end of day report, so you can have a great pulse on everything that's going on, so you can stay really kind of, not necessarily in the clouds, but you can stay up here rather than having to be in the weeds all day, every day. You're getting those quick hit information, that quick hit data for you to keep pressing forward. As always, like, subscribe, questions, comments. I am here to serve. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you next week. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night.